Hi, everybody. So thanks for being present at the conference, How University Professors and Students Adapted to Generative AI over the past 3 years. So the conference will be done by Déri. We will start in a few minutes. So just before starting, can you please confirm that you can hear me well? You have the possibility to put a thumb up or just write in the chat box that, okay, it's fine for the sound, perfect image, right? Great. So just before starting with Catherine, I will just introduce myself first. So my name is Aurélie Verrier. I'm a business advisor at Compilatio since 2012, and I'm in charge of the Half from France, the UK Canadian institution, and the US institution as well at Compilatio. To present you the tool we are using to do the conference, so you have on the left a panel you can click on with different tabs. You have a tabs for writing your questions, a chat box. So during all the Catherine conference, I will look at the chat to look at your questions, to answer if I can do, or just ask Catherine to answer them. You can also take personal tabs, and you have a button at the end of the conference to send all the notes by email. So the email you used to register the session. All the microphones are off for the session, and at the end we will have time for questions and discussions, so we can open the microphone on your demand at that time. And you also have different resources at your disposal you can click on. So just to explain a bit more company and who are we. Company, so is a French Compilatio, is a French company based in the Alps. So we are doing plagiarism prevention and AI prevention since 2003 and operating in more than 40 countries. So we are guiding secondary education institutions or higher education institutions like colleges, universities, engineering schools, etc. Here, the goal is not to talk about Compilatio. So in the resources tab, you could click on different resources, brochures, documentation to download. And if you have any question related to Compilatio, I would be glad to answer by email after the conference. And now we will just enter the real subject we are here for. So thank you, Catherine, for accepting to be present here and to give us more information on AI and on how teachers and students adopted the technology. So maybe first, before starting, I can let you introduce yourself, because of course you know yourself just better than me. So thank you for being present, and you can go with your introduction, and I will pass you the right to share the screen just after that.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you very much, Aurélie, for this introduction. I just noticed that I'm dressed exactly the same as the picture on the previous slide, so this is pretty funny. So I'm from Canada. I worked for the Canadian government for 25 years, and then I transferred into academia in about 12 years ago. So I'm a specialist in education, mostly academic integrity and plagiarism prevention. I'm part of an international partnership that is doing research on university plagiarism prevention. And obviously with the launch of ChatGPT in 2022, the focus of our research has shifted quite a lot. Today I'll be sharing some of those findings that are fresh out of the oven, and I'll also provide some recommendations on how to adjust teaching and learning activities and the likes. I'm very happy to be with you this morning.
Just here, I was just up trying to find these. So now I will, Catherine, let you share the presentation you have. So here, okay. Now you're supposed to get the button share at the bottom to present your
Yeah,
screen.
yeah,
Okay,
it works.
perfect.
Yeah. Okay, should be able to select the screen I want. There we go. Okay, so you should see my full screen right now with the title of my presentation. I do have the chat open as well. I know Aurélie is making sure to track and monitor it, but I'm just curious to know where everybody is coming from. So if you can use the chat and you want to share your location, that would be helpful or useful for me when I cover some of the topic because I'm part of an international partnership. I do know that there's different ways of seeing plagiarism or academic integrity or even generative AI from the different regions in the world. Okay, so I'm gonna kick this off right away. So I'm in a university in the French-speaking province of Quebec in Canada. And that's where the partnership is being managed. And the outline of my presentation is going to follow somewhat the sequence of scientific research, but I will be covering other things than just research findings, but I like to kind of support the things that I'm talking about when I do talk about plagiarism and generative AI with some research results that are very fresh to us. And then we'll get a chance to talk about plagiarism prevention at the end, having a discussion on some of the tools that we're using in the classroom with students at the university level mainly. So academic integrity doesn't have like a specific definition. When you look in the literature, there's a number of definitions for it, but one definition that I like is the one from McFarlane and their collaborator, because it does talk about values. And there's an International Center for Academic Integrity in the United States that has published 6 different values that are associated with academic integrity. And when they last reviewed this list, they added the value of courage in 2021, which I find very interesting because courage in academic context from a student point of view, for example, could mean to have the courage of your own ideas. So students will rely more and more on technology these days, and if they use or overuse chatbots such as Copilot or ChatGPT or Gemini, they will less and less be putting forward their own ideas. So it does take more and more courage nowadays to share your own ideas. From a student's point of view, it's also the courage to report a peer. So for example, if they're working as a team to complete an assignment and there's one of their peers that is plagiarizing, reporting that peer could be very difficult or challenging.
Catherine,
Yep.
sorry to interrupt, but in the chat box, we have 2 persons saying that it seems like muted and they cannot see the presentation. So I'm just checking with everyone that if it's okay. Okay, so we have other persons confirming the sound is good. The PowerPoint as well. Okay, right. Okay, so please go on, Catherine, and I will just check with the 2 persons
Okay.
getting in trouble with that. So thank you.
Okay, no worries. Thanks. So when we talk about plagiarism, we administered questionnaires 2 years ago, almost 3 years ago now, to over 4,000 students in various universities in Canada, the United States, and also Europe, and also over 1,500 instructors or university professors. And what's interesting is that the 2 groups came up with the same reasons why students would plagiarize at the top of the list. So the first 2 of the top 3 were exactly the same for professors and students. So the very top reason why students would plagiarize is because they don't think they're going to get caught. And the second reason is because they run out of time. So they are too close to the deadline and they'll find ways to go around things. And then for the third reason, what's interesting is that professors and students are kind of pointing at each other. For teachers or instructors, they feel like students lack some skills, maybe to cite properly or reference their sources properly, or they don't understand how to paraphrase in their written assignments. And for students, they feel like the teachers or the professors are not explaining the assignments properly. But if we focus on the first two, definitely the use of generative AI will be influenced by these things and also the lack of skills. So when we think of the definition of plagiarism, it has evolved quite a lot in the last 3 years because of the new tools that have come out. And before generative AI, the explosion that we've seen in the last 3 years, plagiarism was really just using someone else's work ideas or words and using them as our own. The director of our partnership came up with a new definition of plagiarism that introduced generative artificial intelligence and also an evaluative context. So really the students are going to be using GenAI to have some kind of benefit or to have an advantage over their peers and to make sure that they get better grades or they pass their assignment. The issue with using GenAI in written assignments is that GenAI or chatbots are definitely not considered as authors or co-authors. And there's a number of reasons for this, but basically a chatbot or a robot or a machine cannot take responsibility for the text that they are generating, which is the definition of being an author. And also copyright laws don't apply to machines or robots. You cannot take a robot to court, for example. So there's the Committee on Publication Ethics that has taken a position on this, like a firm stance pretty early on at the beginning of 2023. And there's a number of scientific journals that have also taken the same stance. And when we look at teaching establishment policies that have come out in the past few years, the position or the stance is pretty similar to what we see in the scientific world. So about a year after the launch of ChatGPT, there are universities in the United States that collected some data to see who was using those tools. And as you can see on the graph here, students were very keen and fast and quick in using ChatGPT, a lot faster than faculties or teachers or professors. So about, in the spring of 2023, we can see there were 27% of students using ChatGPT, and in the fall of 2023, so a year after ChatGPT came out, 50% of the students had used it, whereas on the teacher side, it was only 22% 1 year after the launch of the tool. And there's a number of reasons for that, and I'll get more into this as we go along in my presentation. But this is important to note that the students were a lot faster in using the tools than some of the teachers or the faculty or the professors. One of the reasons why teachers were reluctant is because they felt like the machine was going to be replacing humans, which is not necessarily the case in a lot of ways. So for me, it's always important to show the strengths on each side and to differentiate what humans are able to do that machines cannot do right now, and will not be able to do in the short term. So there's three things that I always put emphasis on when I do these presentations. The first one is the creation. So obviously machines are able to create things, but they do it in a trained manner. We've trained them to do it in a more structured and linear manner, whereas human beings are creating in a more erratic way. Sometimes they will make a mistake, and that will lead to the creation of something unexpected. The creation is also really in line with emotions that humans are feeling. So creation is still something that is a strength on the human side. Humor is also something that machines are not good at. They will certainly, like ChatGPT can tell you a joke. It's not always a good joke, and they will not be able to adjust to your reaction. So that definitely is a strength for the human side. And making decisions with lack of information or ethical dilemma where you have two negative consequences is also something that humans are more strong in doing than artificial intelligence, although artificial intelligence is certainly able to recommend solutions or options or decisions. They will not necessarily be able to anticipate some of the outcomes. And on the machine side, obviously, the volume of information that is the machines are able to manage is a lot larger than what humans will ever be able to do. There is a possibility of networking various machines together. And also at the end of the life cycle of the machine, there's a possibility to transfer the information from one machine to another. Unfortunately, we cannot do that at this point where from one human brain to another human brain. Maybe we'll be able to do that eventually. So when we think about these things in a teaching and learning context, the University of Oregon State has come up with a variation of the Bloom's taxonomy to devise between human skills and GenAI skills, and what you could do in a teaching and learning environment. And if we look here at memory, for example, or remembering things, it's important to still teach some memorization in the classroom because maybe we won't be able to access machines at one point, or there will be some situations where the machines will not be able to respond properly to your queries or your prompts or things like that. But as you can see, creating is at the very top, and again, it's reserved mostly on the human side, although machines can be there to assist in the creation of things. So with all that said, there are three questions that we now need to ask ourselves every time we face a task, or every time we ask students to do something in the classroom. And that's related to cognitive offloading. So cognitive offloading is when you decide to delegate a task or part of a task to a machine. In this case, it's GenAI. And for example, when I go shopping at the mall, I don't necessarily want to memorize the spot in which my car has been parked. So I take my cell phone and I take a picture of the column on which there's the letter and the number of my parking space so that I don't have to use my memory to do that. I'm delegating that task to my phone, which is a device. So the three questions that you need to ask yourself when you're facing a task or you're asking students to complete a task is, do you want to do the task on your own without the assistance of a machine? Do you want a machine to assist you in completing the task? Or do you want the machine to do the task on your behalf? And those three questions are very important these days, and you need to think through in depth on why you're deciding to go towards one option or the other. And if you decide that the machine is going to be completing the task for you from start to finish, you got to understand that there may be a negative effect to that, and I'll give you the example of the Google effect. So since we've been using Google, which is many years now, our memorization capacity has been reduced because we know that we can find information very quickly through search engines. So we tend not to memorize things as much, or not to memorize things as well. And that's called the Google effect. So that effect will have impact on many cognitive tasks that we decide to delegate to machines. So why did some professors or students decide to adjust really well to the new technology that is GenAI, and why did some why were some reluctant at the beginning and are still reluctant? We'll discuss that in the next few minutes by using this framework here. So when you're adjusting to a new technology, there's many steps that you can go through. And on this framework here, there's 4 different steps, and you can skip some steps, but if you want to go in order of these steps, the first step would be gaining awareness about the new tool. So that could be through training, through discussing with others, but at this point, or the first phase, you're not really using the tool yet. You're really just gaining some information on it. The second step would be personal use. So you would be using the new tool in your personal life, with your friends, with your family, or on your own to do simple tasks that are related to your personal life. And then the third step would be professional use. So if we think of a university professor, for example, or a college teacher, the professional usage would be anything that is not related to teaching and learning. So it could be administrative tasks. So it could be writing emails, for example, or if you're working at the university level, it could be doing research with GenAI. And then the last step would be pedagogical use. So that's when you integrate GenAI into your teaching and your learning, and even assessment that you're doing with your students. So as I said, you can skip steps. So right after the launch of ChatGPT in November 2022, when I started the winter term in January 2023, I decided right away to go to phase 4 with my students and test the tools with them, telling them that I didn't fully know all the capacity or the capabilities of these tools, but I just wanted to test them with them so that we can learn how to better use these tools together. So I decided to jump right to step 4. And you can also backtrack sometimes if you start using them in your classroom and it doesn't work really well as you expected. You can go back to personal use, maybe do more trials, and then go back to step 4 as well. So there's different variations here. So we use this framework to analyze some of the interviews we did with both professors and students, and I'll share some results with you in the next few slides. So the partnership that I'm part of is funded by the Canadian government. It involves 32 universities and student associations. There's over 60 university professors or scholars that are involved from 9 different countries, and we operate in a bilingual format, so in both French and English. And it lasts 7 years, so we're a bit more than halfway through at this point. So in year 2, 3, and 4, we conducted 3 separate data collection phases. I already talked to you about questionnaires that we administered 3 years ago. We've got over 6,000 questionnaires that were administered with university professors and undergrad students. 2 years ago, we did interviews and focus groups, again with university professors and students, and I'll share some more results on those in the next few slides. And then in the past year, we just completed a third and last data collection phase with writing tasks. So we were asking professors and students to write a task on the computer, and we were recording the task live on the screen to know what kind of strategies or actions they were doing live when writing an assignment. So now we're in the data analysis and recommendations, and the last 2 years of the project are to design pedagogical material and implement that material so that teachers and students can better learn strategies to avoid or prevent plagiarism in written assignments. So if we look at interviews specifically, we did interviews with students and university professors. Like I said, the students were undergrad students, so bachelor's program. In our interview guide, there were questions on various competencies like searching for information, writing your assignment, and also referencing your sources. And we did ask them about questions on academic integrity or they're verifying their knowledge about plagiarism in general. So most of the interviews were done in person, some were done online, and you have the number of respondents here at the bottom. So from 25 different universities, we did 238 interviews, and that included individual interviews with professors, but also focus groups with students that were composed of about 5 or 6 students together. So here you've got the sociodemographic information about our participants. So as you can see, the interviews lasted about 40 minutes, a little bit more on the student side because they were met as groups. For the university professors, the average age was 45 years old, and they had been teaching for about 15 years. You've got the main disciplines that were represented with humanities and social sciences that were dominating our sample. And we asked them if they had ever received academic integrity training. And that could be in various types of forms. It could be just a webinar or online modules. And as you can see, less than half in both groups had received such training. And on the student side, we also asked them if they had studied in public or private high schools before attending their university program. And as you can see, the majority had attended public high schools. So we're able to do comparison as well between those groups to see if a group has developed a better writing skills or referencing skills than the other. So if we go back to our framework that I showed you, what we noticed is that when analyzing the data, we found results in the 4 different phases of adjusting to GenAI, but we also had like a phase 0, if you wish, of participants that were completely rejecting or avoiding using the new technology. So I'll be showing you excerpts from our interview transcripts on each one of those phases and tell you a little bit why or how they were using the new technology, which is GenAI. So if we look at stage 0, which is the rejection or the avoidance of using GenAI, so in blue, you'll always have an excerpt from a university professor, and then green, it's from a student. So some of the professors said that when ChatGPT came out and other tools followed, in the news, there was these tools were presented as threats. So threats for the education domain mostly, but threats also to be replacing humans in various professions or trades. And that really created this situation where a number of teachers were reluctant to use the tools because of how they were portrayed publicly. And on the student side, you see a student here that feels like it doesn't seem right to be using GenAI because it discredits those who actually do the work. So they feel like to be optimizing their learning, they should be doing the work themselves. So if we look at other responses that are associated with rejection, there's a lot of different reasons why either professors or students are rejecting the tools. And you got to remember that this was last year. but when we talk to some people in the teaching establishments, even now, some of them are still using these arguments that are on this slide. In the first year or two following the launch of ChatGPT, a lot of people were feeling overwhelmed because of the speed of the evolution, the number of tools that were coming out, and also the changes, rapid changes that were made to the different tools and platforms. So there's worried about replacement of human-like capabilities. There's obviously resistance to change in some disciplines more than others. For example, in language, when we think about showing students how to write properly, those that are in linguistic are more reluctant to change than other disciplines. Lack of experience, training, and policy. So the establishments are mostly catching up now and providing good training and have implemented new policy or guidelines on how to use and deal with GenAI in the various institutions. And there's fundamental principles and values also that are associated with this rejection stage. So more and more we talk about the impact on the environment when we're using chatbots compared to just doing a simple search on Google, for example, but also data security and copyrights, which is the rights of authors that I mentioned earlier. If we look at stage one, which is the awareness, so on the left for an example of a professor, it was the attendance of a conference that helped them better understand the ins and the outs of those tools. And for students on this side here, it was, if they were looking to do something, they would probably ask around and ask their peers on a good tool, for example, to develop a list of reference. Other things that participants have mentioned to us in this phase were just exploring based on curiosity, so trialing things or asking others if they had trialed things, but also attending training that were organized by the establishments and exchanging with not just colleagues or peers, but also family members and friends. For the stage 3, which is personal use, we didn't really have a lot of our participants talking about this, just simply because we were talking to them about what they were doing in an academic context, so they weren't really discussing what they were doing in their personal lives with us. But if we look at some of the things that have been discussed with other people after the interviews, we know that some of our participants had either edited photos for their families or looked at recipes or built a training routine to work out or things like that. If we talk about professional usage, so ChatGPT can be used as a search engine for looking for references for professors or university professors doing research. The chatbot is better and better to come up with real references because at first they were producing references that were false, that were made up. Even the web link that was not accurate. And for students here, this is a student that is coming from a military college, and they were saying that it's useful to use to generate images to establish or identify landmarks if you want to orient yourself on the ground, for example. Other professional usage, so it could be tutoring or writing emails or translating. The tools are used to translate quite a lot, it seems, and also revising or restructuring. If you're a university professor drafting an article for publication, it could be very useful. And finally, pedagogical usage. So obviously lots that was shared with us in that regard. Sorry, I'm just going to skip this slide and go to this one, which is the same, just a different format. So for the professors, some of them replaced instructions in their assignments to ask for audio recording to get proof that there was no plagiarism. Also, this professor here was asking for a declaration of usage from their students to make sure that they were transparent about the usage of GenAI, and they insisted that they are there to prepare students for the labor market, so it's important to teach them how to use these tools properly. And for students, when they're learning, creating a general outline or planning their work could be very useful. And you got lots of other options here on using GenAI, either to teach or to learn, and planning courses, developing learning activities. I use it all the time for that, giving me ideas on what I can do with my students. And also demonstrating the potential and shortfalls is important for the students to understand the limits of the tools. Detecting plagiarism, it's still not always reliable depending on the tools that you're using. And for learning, so brainstorming is a good way of using GenAI, coming up with a plan, and also clarifying some more complex concepts. So teachers can use GenAI for various ways, so planning, designing, or evaluating. Although evaluating is being discussed quite a lot lately, so developing marking grids, developing questions, providing feedback is one of the issues that is being discussed. So you want to maintain some evaluative judgment as a teacher or as a professor, and not delegate completely that judgment to a machine. But the machine can certainly help you in drafting some feedback for your students. There's an interesting framework or typology here, or taxonomy, that was developed by an Australian author in suggesting what to do with assignments. So you can either ignore, so completely dismiss the new technology, but that's more and more difficult because it's now integrated in most of the software that we're using. There's like a function or a plugin that has been added into those software. You can ban the technology. Again, that is also becoming increasingly challenging. And if you really want to prepare students for the labor market, these two options are not necessarily the best ones. So you can invigilate, which is design assignment, in ways to avoid the use of GenAI, such as going back to more traditional methods, so paper and pen in the classroom, for example. And that could be useful in some aspects if you really want students to learn the basics of things. And you can embrace the new technology by completely integrating the technology in your assessments. Or you can design around, if you think of assessments that could exploit the limitations of the new technology, and you can rethink your assignments and come up with new ones that are more aligned with what the labor market is doing these days. And then we just kind of linked the 4 phases that I talked to you about to these different options for assessment redesign. I'm almost done here, so a few last things. So for students, they can certainly use GenAI to brainstorm, to plan, or to revise their work, as I mentioned earlier. What's important for them is to be transparent about using GenAI, and I came up with this declaration that I asked my students to add at the end of their written assignments. So they tell me that the assignment was done by themselves, and they have cited all the references that they looked for. And if they used a GenAI tool, they tell me which tool they used and how they used it. You can also use these logos that have been developed by our research center, and those logos are can be added on your slides, for example, if you're presenting or if you're teaching, or you can ask your students to use them on their material as well, or productions. So the first logo is a product that has been completely developed by a human without the aid of artificial intelligence. The middle one is when GenAI completely produced the material, and the third one is halfway through, so it was with the aid of GenAI. So if you go back to the 3 questions that I talked to you about earlier, do you want to do the task yourself? Do you want to do the task with the help of a machine, or do you want a machine to do the task completely for you? So I'll stop here, and if you are looking for more information, you can go to our partnership website here that has lots of resources on GenAI and on academic integrity in general. Thank you very much. I'll take some questions and open for discussion at this point.
Thank you, Catherine, for the presentation. That was very interesting to get your feedback and the different information. So I will just here put the, where is it? Here it's just right here. Here we go. So if you have any question for Catherine, you can, yes, that's here. So yes, we have a question from Marie in the chat box. So what are some good practices to help raise awareness for students of the use of AI in and outside the classroom?
Yeah, so I definitely encourage them to use GenAI in the classroom first while I teach them how to use it properly, and then after that start using it in their personal lives. I think students tend to use GenAI in a very simple and I'm going to say clumsy manner. So they just ask a question and they get an answer, and then they're not completely satisfied with it. Whereas they really need to learn how to formulate a proper prompt. So they need to see GenAI as engaging in a conversation. So introducing themselves, asking the chatbot to adopt a specific role, be clear about what generate the text, like what they want as a result or as a goal, and provide like constraints or details of instructions to the chatbot. And once they receive the first answer from the chatbot, they need to continue engaging. So it's a conversation. So telling the chatbot if they liked something in the answer, or if they didn't like something, if they want clarifications or more precision, or a different format. So it's good to have them do exercises on prompts. And even those that have been using chatbots for the past 3 years are still not good at that. And until they develop good skills for prompting, then they can go out and use it in their personal life in a much more effective way.
To complete, Mary had a question on what type of exercises of application we can have. So I had a feedback from a teacher in a master degree. So they asked the class to use ChatGPT to generate a response to a subject of a bachelor degree. So just the thing they had viewed 2 years ago, and say, okay, now you are 2 years old more, and of course you get more skills on the subject. So what do you think about the AI answer? Is that good, not that good? How can you do to make it better? So it was just taking the response from the AI and say, okay, here it is, and what do you think about that? So we have the critical mind engaged in that process, and to say, okay, how can we do as a human being to go further than just the classic and we could say the global answer the AI can do.
Yeah, I just saw the question from Majduline. So in addition to teaching them how to prompt properly, you can use discussion forums, which I have used quite a lot in the past 3 years. So they post the prompt that has been formulated, they post the response, and then they analyze the content. So that will help them develop a more critical view on the content that is being generated by chatbots, and they have to analyze the content based on the course material. They can also talk to each other on the discussion forums to look at the responses that their peers have received and lend a critical view on that as well. So they try to find hallucinations. So there's still about 10 to 15% of false information that is being generated by chatbots these days, because chatbots cannot leave any blank space in their responses to you. So it's important to be able to identify these false informations inside the generated text.
So we have another question from Michaela. Who would you say should teach our students how to use the AI? That's the first one. And the second one is what teachers, science teachers, language teachers, given the fact that Gen AI is all about critical thinking and soft skills?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think no matter which discipline you're working in, you can certainly teach how to use Gen AI. You need to figure out how the students are going to be using once they integrate their profession or their trade, and try to mirror those tasks to what you're teaching them in the classroom. So for example, I teach in education in a teacher education program. So it's my students are going to go teach in primary and high schools. So I teach them how to ask for the development of learning activity with different age groups. So you can actually ask GenAI to generate a text that is as if you were talking to a 5-year-old. So for example, those that are going to teach in primary school will ask the chatbot to come up with a story that they will be able to read in the classroom. Or if it's for high school, the chatbot can develop a learning activity that will look at developing or enhancing like citizenship values in students that are teenagers. So it's just important to really align with what the labor market is doing now, which is difficult because the labor market is also in flux with the use of GenAI tools. I saw a question on the declaration of integrity. So how to ensure the declaration is valid. So you got to trust that the majority of students want to learn. So I know when we talk about GenAI, immediately we think that everybody is plagiarizing. If you have students that want to plagiarize, they will plagiarize no matter what. Now they have more tools to do so. But you gotta remember that most students will want to learn, will want to do a good job, and will want to develop the skills and the knowledge that they need to be competent when they integrate the profession or the trade that they're aiming at. So I trust that the majority of students that are providing me with a declaration of academic integrity are telling me the right information, and those who don't, then they will lie and cheat and plagiarize no matter what. But that's really interesting for me to know if they have used Gen AI tools and how they used it. And because I'm open to the usage of those tools, it seemed that the students are more transparent with me. And if they're not sure if they can use the tools or not, they will ask me questions before they do so. So it's engaging, or it's generating a conversation, which is really important, more than them hiding what they're doing because the conversation has not been initiated.
Thank you. Maybe just a last question from Gregory. It's regarding the security of data we are putting in Gen AI. So he's asking how to help students to understand to use the AI properly, and the risk of providing sensitive data, like information coming from companies, for example. So do we need to get local LLM, online AI, and what do you think about that?
Yeah. So I'm going to say 3 quick things on this. The first thing is that I usually tell my students not to drag a file and put it in a specific GenAI tool. So for example, if you want to review parts of your assignments, don't drag your Word file into ChatGPT because behind the file, there's some metadata that has, your computer IP that you can be retraced. There's, probably your name, also your student number, and more information on the person that created the document that you don't necessarily want the tool to have in their database. So they can copy paste parts of their assignments for revision, which is fine, and that's more safe than just dragging a full file into those tools. I do teach at military colleges once in a while, and I'm just more careful in the way I provide instructions to these students so that they don't share classified information with those tools. So I really teach them on how to differentiate the information that could be shared with the tools and the information that should not. And the last thing that I'm going to say is that Copilot has developed a enterprise license that is more secure than ChatGPT, for example. So there's a number of post-secondary establishments that have decided to go with Copilot because of that specific license. And now it's just provided as a complete Microsoft package with Copilot that is ensuring more security when managing the data that is being shared.
Thank you, Catherine. So do you have just 1 minute more for the last question, or?
Sure. Yeah, no problem.
Okay, perfect. So the very last one from Michaela, has the reshaping of the curricula to integrate the labor market's needs been discussed through your projects?
To integrate the labor market's needs. The reshaping of the
maybe
curricula.
related to that, the program of studies and the way of finally doing trainings at universities and to be okay with the market, the labor markets.
Yeah, so when we did our interviews last year, the program curricula had not necessarily been reshaped, but when we met with other participants this year to record writing tasks, this is something that has started being discussed. We do talk to people from hundreds of different disciplines. So there's some disciplines that are more ahead of the game than others, but we can certainly see some of the curricula that are being adjusted. But I'm going to say mostly it's individual initiatives in the classrooms, either by lecturers or permanent staff that are just going about change, and it's not necessarily accepted by the collective because of some of the resistance that I discussed earlier.
Okay, so thank you everyone for participating to the conference. Thank you, Catherine, once again for accepting, and that was very interesting. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Catherine.
My pleasure.
Thank you. Bye-bye.